political repressions. What's happening with them? They are not stopping. Right now in Russia, they still look utterly pitiful, and their rarity, unfortunately, only confirms the belief in the very low quality of the current Russian population. And in order probably to reach some kind of global standards of decency, well, Russia, the Russian people, have very little time left. It only has to initiate 796,000 criminal anti-war cases. As you may recall, in Hitler's Germany, there were 800,000 anti-Hitler cases. In Russia, there are only about 4,000 anti-Putin cases. But now another brave man has joined them, Sergei Irin. And today, for his anti-war stance under Article 275, treason against the motherland, he has been sentenced to 15 years in prison. His only crime is that back in 2022, when many Russian hearts were still burning, when Russia committed its criminal invasion of Ukraine, Irin donated, well, some $500 to the Come Back Alive Foundation. But this Irin turned out to be an incredibly strong person. And when this vile, absurd sentence against an innocent man was announced, he, from the defendant's bench, in response, and as his final word, unfurled a poster that, of course, read, "Putin is a dickhead," thereby proving that he is a person of quality, a very high-quality person. He did not apologize and did not repent. Of course, there are many trials going on. And naturally, with the country's crimes being so obvious, with such blatant displays of absurdity, meanness, and lawlessness by the authorities, and with the absence of a revolution or even an uprising, even an unsuccessful one, this is a verdict. It is a verdict on the people and their human qualities. And this probably is something we just have to accept and come to terms with. Plus, Russia isn't even trying to hide what kind of country it truly wants to be. And one of the most striking and deeply concerning recent news stories is that Russia has demonstratively and unequivocally withdrawn from the European Convention Against Torture. This is from the very convention that explicitly makes torture utterly unacceptable and unequivocally criminal. But here we also need to understand it is absolutely impossible to build the Russian world without the use of torture. A prosecutor without torture is like a nostril without a booger. It's a ridiculous sight. All the more so for the FSB, the investigative committee, or prison guard. For them, torture is now the primary tool at work because it's not just about maiming and intimidating, it's also about humiliating so-called foreign agents and free thinkers. Of course, torture hasn't stopped over these 20 years, all these Putin years. But the torturers were forced to, as they say, keep it quiet, feel embarrassed, and blush. They were deprived of the opportunity to boast about the fruits of their labor. Now everything will be different. Torture is the norm of life. Every operative, every law enforcement scum can now, without false shame, present the results of their work. Every executioner can step out of the shadows. Usually, when it comes to me, he can be at ease. His work, as has already been acknowledged, multiplies the bonds, strengthens spirituality, and reinforces power. The power of the beloved schizophrenic in the Kremlin. And the denunciation of this torture agreement is what is truly called a return to the roots. And by the way, the population should like this. Another matter is that the population, to some extent, will also experience this themselves. But you can't feel sorry for them. This population chose to live under fascism themselves. And fascism never comes without a bit of torture. And by the way, the Russian Orthodox Church is also absolutely delighted. Of course, there are also attempts to cover all this up and somehow smooth it over. Take, for example, the well-known Harpies Union for Human Rights under the president. They dodge, they flirt, they claim that things aren't all that grim. And the local chupacabras from this council refer to the UN Convention, which Russia still hasn't withdrawn from, and to Article 286, which supposedly prohibits torture and abuse. But this UN document is just a decorative piece of worthless paper. Even Nebenzia has repeatedly wiped his feet on it. And as for Article 286, it quite explicitly prohibits the use of torture in a very interesting and rather unique way. You've probably never even opened it. And here's how it prohibits them. Let me read it to you verbatim. It is not considered torture to inflict physical or moral suffering that arises as a direct and unavoidable result of lawful actions by an official or another person, or is inevitably and inherently associated with such actions. That's Article 286. This is a blatant and undeniable carte blanche for any and all kinds of torture. But it must be said that even such a vivid, striking illustration of degradation, which should have made everyone, should have explained to people what kind of country they live in, what kind of country they actually live in, didn't provoke any reaction at all. Action, well, only some minor chupacabra from the Harpy Council fussed about it a little, but everyone else simply paid no attention to it.